Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Stories Around Azeroth. I am always Pete, Titans Creed Nevercoat, and joined by the Holiday Gnome, one Mr. Frazley. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Back to be back in the saddle. Back to be using a mic that's on a boom arm, not one that I'm holding on a car with the car turned on because it was blazing. It was like 90 plus degrees where I was.
Plus, you're in a metal box as well, so that surely can't have been helping things.
No, and if I had recorded in the hotel we were at, I would have had all the room noise. Plus, my nephew would have been like, "Oh, you're on a podcast! Oh, I'm gonna be on! I'm like, no, nephew, it's time to podcast.
This is Frazley's time.
Yes, it's my time. My time to shine.
Cosmic greetings to everybody that's in the chat while we are live over on Twitch recording this. For the benefit of the YouTube and iTunes and all the other podcast feeds, a big cosmic greetings to you as well. And we hope you're enjoying this if you're not catching it live. Today we have got our normal list of things that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what we have been up to this week. We're going to chat about the war campaign and the Crossroads cinematic, which we didn't do last week because Mr. Frazley hadn't seen them yet. There's some other bits and pieces around the world of Warcraft and Azeroth itself that we're going to talk about as well. Specifically, the Road to World First, with that coming up in a couple of weeks with that opening, plus all the Method versus Red Bull stuff as well. I'm at Heart of Azeroth 56, so there's some extra storyline I get to talk about today. And plus, we might be talking about some more recent dev leaks that have come out on 4chan. Believable or not, there is some stuff in there that pertains to the story of the World of Warcraft and how it goes. So it's nice to have a chat and see what we think. We're not 100% credible, but, you know, it's always fun to speculate, as I do like to do. I hope everybody is good in the chat. So, Mr. Frazley, you obviously have had very limited time in the World of Warcraft in the last week and a bit since we've last chat. But what have you been up to?
So I thankfully had a little bit of Wi-Fi, so I was actually pretty impressed. And I got to go into Nashtar, and I was doing what you said, focusing on Nashtar, getting my bodyguard. So my bodyguard's about to hit rank 3. So I have to do a few more quests, but I'm focusing on dailies whenever I can, working on my rep there. I've got my rep with the wave breakers or wave blades.
Yeah, and Cohen's, yeah.
Yeah, I've got that up to friendly now, and I'm working my way up to honored. I just had a Darkness Fair buff, and I found out that those expire when you die, so I gotta go back after this podcast and ride the wheel again. But yeah, working on that. Fraz's eye level is 379, so nowhere near where it should be, but hey.
Doesn't matter. You've got all that Benthic gear that's 385 base level.
Yeah, and I just gotta get those sweet pearls to upgrade.
Absolutely. Is that it? Have you had a look at Mechagon yet?
Not yet, because I decided, as you said, I wanted to work a little bit on the war campaign, and if I spread my stuff out too thin, I'm going to go here and here and here, and I kind of want that war campaign because of the Gnome Heritage armor, so I'd love to go into Mechagon wearing the armor of my people.
The armor of your people. Brilliant stuff. So, I have been... I've been a very busy bee.
Oh, yes, you have.
I have been a very busy bee. I actually have Warcraft open at the moment, so I can actually tell you where I'm at rep-wise and everything else. So, as it currently stands, with the Waveblade and Cohen, I am at 4,550 through Revered. My bodyguards, my Farsi is at rank 1, my Hunter's at rank 4, and my Bladesman is at rank 10. In terms of Mechagon, I am 7,752 through the Rustbolt Resistance rep through Revered. So yes, I have flying. I've had flying for a few days. My God, life is so much better when you can fly. It literally makes things so much easier. But there is something to be said about everybody being on the floor. I'll be honest. It's a very different thing, but everybody's just trying to get flying because we're so used to it now. It's very weird because I said the same thing during Warlords, during Legion. You know, ever since they put the Pathfinder in as a requirement to fly, you're still just doing ground stuff, and then you're like, oh yeah, I can fly. It's bizarre. It really is. Speaking of bizarre, mount equipment. So if you've all got your Striders and bits and pieces, Water Striders, you got your free bit of water walking equipment when you logged in last week. So while if you equip one bit of a mount equipment, it doesn't matter what mount you put it on, all of your mounts on that character are affected by that mount equipment. However, even though the mounts are account wide, the mount equipment is not. So it's like, okay, every character gets those when you log in because you've got the Water Strider on your account. But it's like, why not just make the mount equipment like account wide?
Yeah.
It's bizarre to me. Like, it's the whole system's there. But then I've been lobbying for account wide bases since the dawn of time. So, like, just everything
all excited. Yeah.
But yeah, like, my Heart of Azeroth, I hit 56 this morning, which it's not bad. It's not horrible. I am focusing on one character though, so before we were setting up for the call, I spent about an hour in Nashtar, did some rares, and got about 26 pearls. So, because it's interesting, because some of the Benthic gear, if there are correct slots for each character to have, and they're apparently, if you can get them with sockets, they sim higher than raid mythic level gear.
Oh, I could see that, because then that way they're trying to give content.
It's not so much that, it's because the Benthic gear has certain abilities on them for Najdatar and the raid. And so stuff like the best boots for my Demon Hunter are ones that do increased damage on my critical hits to enemies in Najdatar and the Eternal Palace. And that wording is very specific. It's everything in the Eternal Palace as well. So a lot of people are, like myself, we've got the right items and we're just trying to roll it for the socket. Because it's the socket that pushes it above the simmed gear for the mythic gear. Because it's just, the mythic gear is just flat stat weights. So I think this could be something that Blizzard is trying, but it's also worth not upgrading this gear until Mythic Week to see if Blizzard hits it with a nerf bat. I don't think they will, because to upgrade a piece of Benthic gear from 485 to 425 is like 220 pearls to work the math out to. Plus you've got all the pearls as well that's got to spin to the roulette wheel to see if you get A, the correct item, and B, with a socket. So
yeah, and for a raider, what I understand is you have a lot of work to do, like getting your mats. You have a lot of things in between raids. So the time to get these pearls and add in the RNG for the right item. Mm-hmm. Was it you that we talked about? Like, there's too many things, too many ways to get there are or were too many ways to get gear that you never knew.
I think it was a conversation that you might have had with Acid Tears, Michael, over at the Blue Recruits and that sort of stuff, because I'd mentioned, because way back when, during one of the last episodes of the Blue Recruits, I think it was either the Genome project that you're doing, I mentioned that I started playing again, and Michael had this thing that said, well, if you hit item level 400 without stepping back in a raid, I'm going to be mad. And obviously I got my characters up to 400 before the new patch came out, and that's just a lot of work. Like, it's very easy to hit the benchmark about 370, and then you've got to put the extra work in to get 390, 400. It's very different to the catch-up mechanics of Wrath, I can tell you that now, because Wrath was just literally, you could just keep pounding those dungeon runs, keep pounding it. Even in TBC, you could just keep doing the dungeon runs and get the badges, but you were capped on badges per week, but you always had that end goal in mind. Catch-up mechanics now, 385 is decent, but then the pearls being able to upgrade, there's a fair bit to it. I think on the account, let me actually have a look. How many pearls have I done? Because I've not spent as much time in Najdatar as I probably should have done. I'll be honest with you. Exploration, Battle for Azeroth. 395 mana pearls I've had.
Okay, and that's quite a bit of time put into that.
You say that, but I've made 26 of those in an hour tonight, just by doing rares.
Okay, yes. I mean, for me, sometimes playtime's limited, so
absolutely.
Maybe that's
but I mean, the daily quests will get you about 10, I think.
Okay, and then hunt the rares, and you could get like a hunting party. And especially with flying, it's easier to get all those
absolutely,
rares.
Yeah. And then you've got all the different events and the commanders and the summon from the depths and the battle for Najdatar and everything else that goes on and bits and pieces.
Oh, quick side topic, because I actually ran into one of these right after the hotfix. What do you think of the battle for Nashatar, and then the?
It really depends on your shard. At the moment, and I can tell you this because I've been doing a lot of PvP, and it's been really enjoyable for 8.2. Because obviously there's a goal to go for, rather than just, oh, I want to hit that next prestige level to get my mount, my appearance, my pet, whatever. Now there's, if I hit so much honor in battlegrounds and everything else, I get an essence, which is good, because Blood of the Enemy is really fun to play with. So I think within 3-4 days I got rank 2 of Blood of the Enemy. It was the first rank 2 essence I got. I'm about 15,000 honor away from getting rank 3, which is 50,000 honor. But it's... because season 3 starts next week, I've been getting all the prep up. So today, instead of this weekend, where last weekend I did lots of battlegrounds, this weekend I've done my mythics, my mythic plus, I've done my weekly mythics, and I've done... I did my conquest hunting to get my conquest box for next week, so I can get both the mythic plus rank 1 essence and the 500 conquest conflict and strife, which is my second best miner. So I need to work on that. So I've got those ready and prepped for next week, and well, Wednesday on my time, I should say, ready for those essences to drop. So I've been putting more time into prep, as we were talking about, because there's a lot to it and getting ready. I'm pretty much ready for raiding. I was the first person with flying in the guild. I'm the person with the highest heart of Azeroth in the guild. This sounds really bad. Like, for a guy who took 6 months off of WoW to come back, and I've just smashed it in a week and a half.
But I mean, it just shows you're dedicated. Like you said on the Genome Project, you're like my older brother. You're just like that I look up to, not just because of height.
Yes, well, I think you're taller than most of us anyway, even if you are a gnome.
Yes, I actually met somebody from I met the husband of somebody in our guild, and the husband's like, "You're taller than I thought would be."
I think it's one of those things, isn't it? It's because you're so tall in real life, you want to play a smaller character in a video game.
Yeah, because it's like playing out what I want to be. I know it sounds weird, but I want to be short. I don't like being tall. There's a lot of things that are awful for being tall, and I mean that's like tall people problems. But it's just like you bump your head into things. You can't fit into things. You stand out in a crowd. I just want to be kind of. I want to not be able to go over fences, stuff like that. I mean, I can just step over a fence.
That's good. But yeah, so you think you want to be short, says chat. There's a lot to do, and a lot of people are forgetting that the only AP you're getting on Nashatar and Mechagon, unless you get lucky with a world quest that spawns, the only AP you actually get is off your daily rares. Mechagon seems to be static at 100 a rare, whereas Nashatar jumps anywhere between 35 and 100, which is very weird to me. Now, it's Mechagon feels very strange in reflect of Nashatar, and I think the reason Mechagon feels fun to be in from day one is because there's anti-gravity packs that have been available you can make them once you get the recipe, and then there's also charging stations which people can put, not charging stations, armories, which the players can fix, and they'll give you an anti-grav pack for 20 minutes, and you can just fly around the island, and it's limited to the island, yeah, but it feels like you can do so much. The rares are on a repeated spawn time, and the island's quite compact, so you're not exactly getting lost even around Nashatar. And it feels like it's a lot more fun to be on, you know. And even when you finish off your dailies, which there is a load more of than there are on Nashatar, you know, even if you take apart like the rotating dailies that come in from the different characters, as well as alternate Mechagon as well, where you can get some extra dailies there. It's so much to do there, and it feels fun because it doesn't really feel like it's time gated. Because even with the quest to build the spider mount in Mechagon that I finished today, because I've done it, you do get a quest once every day for it. that's felt like it's just flown by, because every time I go to Mechagon, there's just been fun to do, but there's no compulsion to stay there. Whereas because the main story of Nazjatar revolves around, I mean, you pretty much finish it by the time you get the 3,000 experience over all of your followers, and that leads into the raid quest and everything else. So that's not too horrible, but because you know that time gating's there, it feels horrible. But now when you finish that and you're like, well, I've got flying, it's just like, I'll just go and do my daily stuff and aim for my rank 3 SSs and everything else. So once you get past that, the time sync wasn't that bad. But that's coming from someone who's got a fair bit more time to do things.
Yeah. And I'd say probably as a casual, I like that there's a lot of stuff that's going to be there, because we're pretty much going to, I believe these are going to be our 2 major zones until the next expansion. I mean, 8.3, I don't see 8.3 being that big. I think this is our big patch. 8.2.5, 8.3. They're going to be things and there'll be quests. But this is like this is our Argus. This is our major stuff to do. If anything,
I disagree, but that will come. That will come with a topic that comes later on and the progression of the rest of the story. But I get what you're saying. But I think this feels already better than Argus in terms of the fact that the questing on Argus was limited to your weekly stuff, like to where you could progress per it, whereas this has been daily, and that's already felt a lot better compared to weekly stuff, because take Suramar as a big example. That was a big do a quest, grind your rep, come back the next week, grind your rep, come back again, and then you're rep gated then as well, and it didn't feel nice, if you know what I'm saying. Whereas this has just been felt, there's been no rep gating for it technically. There's just been XP gating, which has been just daily quest grinding, which is not even that bad. Like with flying, you're probably looking at about 30 to 40 minutes if you don't do the rares in each zone. If you do the rares, hour and a half, 2 hours maybe per zone, which is more than enough. Like as it stands, my routine at the moment is get up. When I log onto WoW, I do an entire artifact power tour, is what I call it. I call it the tour, where I go through both Kultiras and whichever Warfront zone is up that week, and Zandalar as well. Do all the artifact power dailies, the world quests, because you're getting about 3,000 artifact power a day if you just do those.
Okay.
Which isn't horrible, and they're not exactly horrible to get around, because you can just unlock all the flight points easily. And then I go and do Mechagon, because it's fun to do, and the rares are easy to fly around, and then I go do Nazjatar. And then if I've got time, I do the Battlegrounds. Like, all in all, I'm probably spending about 3 to 4 hours doing that. And even on a casual time scale, I don't think that's too bad.
No, especially, absolutely not. And then if you don't spend as much, just probably downscale a little bit of that. But yeah.
I mean, just do what you want. As I said, the biggest thing to focus on is get Nazjatar up, and then you can do Mechagon when you want, because like the war campaign is tied to finishing the Nazjatar story. Well, not even that. It's you go to Nazjatar, you go to the heart, you go back to Nazjatar, you do some more stuff, and then you get the Mechagon quest and you get the war quest pop up at the same time. So it's not that horrible. You can unlock everything in day one, and I think that's a decent enough segue where we can talk about the war campaign and the story to rescue Bane from the Underhold. Have you done this now, Frazley?
I have not done that, so I've only did the cinematic. So I watched the cinematic ahead of time, so I know what's happening with that. But I have not. I've not done the war campaign. So I need to do the quest in Nazjatar, and I've just been getting distracted all over Nazjatar.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fair. It's the thing to do. So, without spoiling anything that happens in there, Bane is being held in the Underhold under Orgrimmar. So basically, where we did the Siege of Orgrimmar, essentially, and fought Garrosh. Well, not exactly the same room we fought Garrosh, but on the way to there. And Bane is being kept there, and the Alliance go in with Jaina and Matthias Shaw, and the Horde go in with Thrall and Saurfang. Just like in the normal Siege of Orgrimmar, we bump into each other, and they go from there. There is a character that makes an appearance, and actually references the Purge of Dalaran from way back in Mr. Pandaria. So that was a lovely callback. But otherwise, we've got the Crossroads cinematic, which you have seen.
Yes.
What did you think?
I thought it was amazing, and it's kind of where I was hoping that things have been going. Like, seeing it is confirmed with what I'm hoping, that we have a faction divided, and people are going behind the backs of the main leader, trying to get what they think going. I mean, it mirrors some of what we're seeing in U.S. politics, and that's all I'll say there. I'm just saying it's cool to see a topic like that being played out in a game. And like it's like that's and I think it's a fascinating concept in the U.S. and I think I mean not fascinating that it's happening, but still I think in the game. So it's cool to see it as the Horde, and it's like it really brings out the evil. There's no evil or good faction. They each have things that they struggle with.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. It's also very reminiscent of Mists and the story there, but it feels like a lot more up and in your face and everything else. Now, if you played Horde during Mr. Pandaria, you obviously saw how Garrosh was very... Garrosh's story was all over the place when they were trying to push him, because you had the stuff in Kalimdor, more specifically... Oh my god, what's that zone called? It's days like this, I'm really glad I've got... I've really got WoW open on the other side, on the other map. Stone Talon Mountains, and he had that thing where he came across as a very strong, very, very good war leader, war chief, and then we had stuff like the stuff in Pandaria with the Bell and everything else, where he was very aggressive, and he came across, but they didn't really turn around and go, I'm gonna be this dictator and everything else, until we had the Siege of Orgrimmar patch, where he just decided to go grab the Heart of Visage and everything else. So, whereas this feels very in your face and everything else, we can see there's ulterior motives with Blightcaller, and the fact that Sylvanas pops up and again to do stuff. Like, she's the one that left on the boat with Ashvane, and then Ashvane is suddenly with the Naga. So, it's very... It's one of the benefits for doing the war campaign on both factions, is that you are actually able to see the story go through. So there's definitely a lot there, and it really feels like they're replaying that story and just pushing it and dialing up to 11 and just being going, there are no shades of grey. This is happening. You know,
yeah.
This is happening, and it's a thing you have to deal with. So the question is, will there be a burning of not Teldrassil, Thunderbluff? But then also the other questions we're getting is this going to be the end of the faction war and everything else? Like, have Blizzard finally decided that writing a story for two factions is too difficult, with a story that they want to tell with the planet and the Void Lords, because that's where the story is shifting, to deal with Void Lords and everything else. That's why they're bumping up the old gods in a big way again. So, is the story too difficult for an Alliance and a Horde, and are they going to do what Final Fantasy XIV does, and have the story just revolve around the player?
I could see that, because kind of make the whatever faction's kind of in the background. It's there, but the story's you.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. There are obviously some difficulties. How does PvP work into this? Like, are the factions still going to be there, but then there's no focus on the faction war, you know? Like, there's no faction conflict per se, and then Warsong Gulch, Arathi Basin are all just going to be, we're still fighting for resources, this, like, be what they are. They're honorable battles, you know?
What if war mode turned into then free for all? That, like, you could decide somebody's there, You decide if you are good or evil, and if it's a player out there that you're not grouped with that you just want to take out, that's up to you. It doesn't matter if they're Horde or Alliance. And I mean, I think that would be why I think it would keep the factions. I would like being able to group up with Horde and Alliance. I think Twitter, Facebook, Discord has changed the whole faction thing. I'm not locked anymore to just talking with people of my faction. I talk to people all the time of the Horde faction. So really, I don't feel that Horde versus Alliance.
Absolutely, I agree. I feel a lot of this changed when we got battle tags in game, because before then it was literally just your friends, and you can only add a friend if they were on the same server. Then you had battle tags, which were meant to be cross server friendships and everything else, and you find people in LFG and you're able to add them to your friends list and be like that and everything else. I've never done that myself, but I've heard people that have done it. But then it's turned into the fact of I can see people all my friends in other games. I can see my friends on cross factions and everything else, and I've got all my friends in bits and pieces. So it's a very interesting way that things have come.
And I think the Zara lore was an interesting test of giving you the same story for both sides, and you play both sides. I think it was kind of I could almost see, because it turned you Horde or Alliance, they could do some stuff with that. I mean, there's a lot of issues with that, but the Zara lore was definitely very both factions together.
Yeah.
I mean, they're fighting each other, but you experience the exact same story.
Exactly. And the Twitch chat is Leo Wild in the Twitch chat is saying he'd be okay with the factual ending. It does feel forced most of the time at this point. And on that, I want to say that's completely the way it is. Look at how they did it in Mists. They specifically made the point of saying, when they released the announcement for Mists of Pandaria, that they're going to put the war back into Warcraft. What was the big selling point of Battle for Azeroth? It was the whole point of the faction war. You know, we're fighting each other. So it does feel forced, as it's the big fight. Yes, sir.
But I've still from the beginning thought that this was there because it's supposed to distract us. I still...
absolutely. I mean, there were... If we go back to like one of the first episodes we talked about a theory post about how this is all going to be the battle for the planet rather than the battle against each other.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's why they're doing Mist again, is they want us to think that we know where it's going, so then they can 180 it and be like, no. Because the whole time along, I've known it's been for the planet, or at least I felt it's been for the planet.
So the way the Mist stuff worked is that the raids and that, like, while we had specific faction content, so 5.1 had the Alliance and the Horde fighting, landing on the shore, and they were fighting for that, and that was the big like conflict that was there. And then we had the story as well, the PvE story that went with that. But the raids in the big content patches was still very well. We're still both fighting the same enemy.
Yeah, and wasn't Siege even together? You're going in to stop Garrosh.
Exactly. Yeah. But the thing that they've done this one is that they've given us the option to side with Sylvanas, if as a Horde player, which has been interesting. I think I was watching somebody's reaction video to the new war campaign the other day. We're saying, yeah, I just ratted everybody out to Sylvanas. Sodom. I just did it. It was interesting to see, because he's obviously a Sylvanas loyalist.
Yeah, and there are definitely some of those. For me, I've gone Sourfang the whole way. When I took Into through that 8.1 option, I was Sourfang.
It's interesting, because there's got to be a fine point, which means that probably 8.3 or whatever they choose to do before the end, there'll be a thing that turns around and goes, yep, you know, Sylvanas knows and all this, and we know about the traitors, because they've said that in the current war campaign. Like, the current step of the war campaign is they plan to save Bane. Like, Sylvanas knows that they're coming.
And again, not to get Leo Wild's hope up in chat, but I thought the reason why we only saw one allied race in the Brewfest, what if the Vulpera are the neutral faction, or at least they can go out Horde or I'm just thinking the signs, because we haven't seen anything.
It really depends. As much as I'd like Volpira to be neutral, like Pandaren, it really depends if Alliance are going to get Mechanomes or not, because they have to get a small race to compensate, and that's how they'll play it. Because that's how Blizzard have always played it. Because that's why the Horde got Goblins back in Cataclysm, because they didn't have a small race. And that's why we got Draenei, and it's why we got Worgen, because they were tool characters in form and everything else to counteract the Trolls and the Tauren. So Blizzard will probably play it that way, but it's fine.
And the Alliance needed a animal race, like the Tauren.
Yeah, kind of. But they're still human, aren't they?
Yeah, that is true.
So, I think we can both agree Crossroads is very, very good. It's standard for the animation team to really do something this good, as usual, with the different tones and everything else. And just the different visual storytelling they're doing. And it's just good. It's just good to hear all those familiar voices again coming out of the same room. And because these guys, Laura Bailey and Chris Metzen and all these characters that have played the same characters for so long, for 15 years now, the chat between them feels more personable.
Yeah, and that's cool to see that coming through. It is interesting that we're killing off a lot of cities. Like if Thunderbuff goes down, it is interesting. I mean, that we're getting rid of classic cities.
I mean, think about it. I mean, Undercity specifically, it wasn't really undead themed. It's just human in a sewer, So, and a lot of people complained it was lost. It was hard to get around, and Darnassus was never a decent city that was well doing or anything else. Maybe they're cutting down on faction cities. Who knows? I don't think Thunderbluff is going to go get raised personally. I think it's there as a threat to say, like, this isn't beyond Sylvanas' reach of doing. So, who knows?
Yeah.
But, I mean, we're a couple of days away from the Eternal Palace being open, and we are a week away from the Mythic World First race being a thing. Over the last couple of days and bits and pieces, we've seen Method come forward, Sko specifically, since he is one of the big faces of Method, and turned around and they released a post about how they're not partnering up with Red Bull this year. Not this year. This patch for the World First race. They are now working with someone else. They're working with Take TV in Germany, so they'll be over in Germany, but they'll have worldwide stream feeds and everything else. Whereas the Red Bull one in London and everything else, they are going to be working with Limit and Pieces, which is going to be interesting because they'll have feeds, especially from Pieces who weren't streaming during Crucible of Storms. So, I mean, the biggest thing here is that there's a big bit of beef, because Method have come out and said, even though, well, I'll talk about that in a minute. Method have come out and said that Red Bull wanted to have the Crucible of Storms stream specifically on the Red Bull channel, but they acquiesced in like the last week before it happened, because Method wants it to keep it community based and more Blizzard based than handing it over to a corporation and letting them do the things. But they shared a lot of the ideas, saying like if we can continue this partnership, this is where we believe we can take it forward, get the other raids to stream so that we can have cut, jump, protectors, and it feels more esporty, where they've got the constant, like the same sort of race we see at BlizzCon.
Yeah.
So there hasn't been a lot of news, because normally the news of the race for World First being at Red Bull came out weeks and weeks and weeks in advance. And earlier on today, we've had the drop of the Red Bull are working with Limit and Pieces. Apparently, some streamers got dropped emails way back at the beginning of June before 8.2 was officially announced, saying like, this is the date that we'll be doing the World First rate with Limit and Pieces. Can we get you on board to come over and commentate? A lot of those individuals have turned around and said, fuck no, I'm going to be raiding Mythic Eternal Palace that week. I can't go and spend time away from my raid guild to go and do commentary on this. But Method have obviously come forward and been like, we're trying to keep it community-based. Only the community and Blizzard should have rights over to call it a race to world first. Which is very odd coming from Method specifically. While I like the idea behind the intention of the words, Method itself is a corporation. And are the ones that have really pushed the race to world first to be a big streamed thing, this expansion. You know? They're the ones that have come forward and gone like, we've got nothing... I mean, they've essentially turned around and gone, we're the big dicks on campus, we've got nothing to lose by streaming this. So, and they've done it, and you know, they've obviously fell short in Crucible to pieces and everything else. But it's interesting to see these words come from Method when Method are itself a corporation these days with how much they are spread around the gaming atmosphere.
Yeah, and my question would be, who started the Race to World first?
Oh, this was the thing back in Classic.
Yeah, but I mean, like events, like who started it and who passed the reins down? Because we saw an issue with...
you're looking like this transcends Warcraft as a thing, you know? Because you've always had everything that exists to do the race to world first, whatever. Like in anything that's big enough to be anything. Like people claim world first speed runs, people claim world first completion of games and everything else. But because, so like all the way through Warcraft's history, all the way back at Molten Core and everything else, you always had the world first to 60, the world first to clear Molten Core, the world first to finish this. You know, even when Wrath came along, they brought in the achievements, which are server first bits and pieces, you know, to get there. You had your server first achievements, but you couldn't really do a world first thing. But the world first have been pushed by Blizzard when they instigated the Hall of Fame for raiding this expansion. So the top 100 guilds from each faction side were noted in there, and those plays itself have a specific title. You know, they're going to be documented for all of time. Whereas, like, all of their history and stuff is now dated in Chronicles. It's like, oh, the Horde beat Ragnaros, etc., you know?
Yeah.
But Method are the ones that have really turned around and decided to stream it. Like, previously to this, no big guild has really... None of the top 10, top 5, top 10 guilds have ever streamed World First Progress on Mythic raiding. It's only been since this expansion Method have gone, we don't see any competition, we've got nothing to lose by streaming, you know, and they've had that lead through the name forgets me. I'm going to say Uldum, but it's not that. Well, whatever, Gahoon. I'm going to just say Gahoon, and you know, it was close for Desire Law, but they still won that out, and then they lost Crucible of Storms because Pieces have done it, but Pieces haven't streamed, which they're now going to be doing at Red Bull apparently. So the push to really use it as an advertising vehicle has come from Method doing it with Red Bull. But Red Bull have what the way the tone comes from Sko's post that came a couple of days ago is that Red Bull wanted to monopolize it and monetize it for their own thing. Method wanted to stay within the community, because unlike big esports teams where those players get specifically paid by the sponsors and everything else, while these big teams like Method have sponsors because these guys are streaming every day and playing the game and they're making the money from the sponsors and they're getting out there getting the world first with the sponsor banner, they get paid that way. Under the banner of Red Bull, it's Red Bull that's making the money and not paying the players. That's the way it's coming across. But you know, these players from Limit and Pieces have sponsors anyway, so they're going to get paid by their sponsors. So it feels more Method and pissy that they can't get things to work their way from with Red Bull and everything else, but then it feels less like it's a community thing and more like it's Method versus Red Bull, corporation versus corporation, you know?
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Like, the reason I brought that up is we just had the troll run, and something happened this year where another group wanted to take over the name of the troll run, but Dravi's been the one since the beginning of the troll run and the gnome run who's been running this specific thing. So I wanted to make sure that it wasn't Red Bull taking the title, but that it's but that really Method didn't own the title. They just have been doing the Race for World First, and they're
So
upset that
it's been Method organizing the Race for World First, working with the Red Bull at the gaming sphere.
okay,
They wanted to work with them again for Eternal Palace, but Red Bull has decided to do... I presume they're going to brand it the Red Bull Race to World First, rather than it just be the Race to World First sponsored by Red Bull.
got it. Okay, yeah.
That's what this whole situation sounds like.
So the consumer is going to win that we're going to be able to see Method, and we're going to be able to see Limit in pieces.
Yeah,
so
we're
as
a consumer, we'll win. Absolutely. Watching it on Twitch is probably going to be one of those situations where I have the whole video just maximized and I don't watch Twitch, the Twitch chat. It's going to be probably one of the worst places to read anything, because these the fans of all these big guilds are very, very type. It's be like anytime they make a mistake, it'd be like Method Raider boys, and that sort of sarcastic drip. And like, if you're a Method fan, these Method fans are going to be in the Red Bull chat, and they'd be like, "Lol, you're not Method." And Limit and Pieces ones are going to be there in the Method chat, doing the same thing. But on the flip side, Method now have streamable competition where they can see where their exact competition, Limit and Pieces, are going to be, which is what they haven't had previously. You know? So the Race for World First has got very, very interesting. But it's interesting for both the good reasons and the bad reasons, you know?
Yeah. And I say if this leads to at some point an official thing like the MDI or the Arena World Cup, I mean, it would be cool if it actually could at some point become a legitimate thing by Blizzard. I mean, more so than what it is. It would be cool to have these.
It would be nice if it was a Blizzard specific thing, but then the only way I could specifically see Blizzard doing a thing would be for them to have access to the streams of a specific player, because they can't get half the guys to go out, because they're probably, if they want the production value, get them to have to go all the way over to the US, and then playing with the rest, say like SCO and all that, they'll get like 5 players from Method EU to go all the way over there, but they're then using an American internet connection to play with the rest of EU, which is obviously a ping, and as a tank as SCO is, that's not going to be a viable thing. So they might have to just input stream, because they're not going to get direct feed that way, you know? The only other way I could possibly see Blizzard doing it is they get specific casters. They get your Preach, they get your Rich, they get Bay, you know, fly those guys out, but then Blizzard being able to do what Blizzard do and have the invisible GMs in the fight, and they can actually spectate the fight as it was, which gives it a better thing than what we actually see, because normally we only see the perspective of each specific player, you know? And like from the previous World First, we get the input from players that are switched to it, debating on the production team. Now, if it was Blizzard run, they could switch to whoever's thing they wanted to do, but the problem is they'd have to speak to whoever's organising those specific raid guilds to get permission to be able to do that, because, you know, while Limit, Pieces and Method have obviously agreed to have their stuff streamed, you know, what's to say Blizzard go into another up-and-coming guild out of nowhere because these guys have just suddenly shot up the rankings of WoW Progress, and Blizzard goes, well, these guys are ahead of these guys in the US, but the US haven't agreed to it, and all of a sudden, you know, they've got this open on the other screen because they're trying to watch Method, Limit, Pieces, and then all of a sudden it's their raid that's popped up on the stream. I think it's very difficult, and I think that's why Blizzard haven't really bothered getting into the Race for World First thing, because there's too many different variables to deal with.
Yeah, whereas like the arenas MDIs are their own servers, and it's not about who's first. It's showing who's doing good in this instance that Blizzard set up.
It would be a very different thing if they had a Race to World First tournament server, Because to sign onto the tournament server, you have to sign a specific agreement to go on there with your PvP stuff, I believe. And that's why and the tournament servers are all specific at gear levels and everything else. So that's specifically down to the skill of the characters and everything else, you know, because there's no difference in terms of gear level or whatever. But they'd have to do it on a tournament server in order to do that. And I think that would be very difficult because they're hosted separately. And so imagine the top, we'll say 200 guilds, yeah? So that'll be the first 100 Horde and the first 100 Alliance. But then, you know, what? All it takes is one guild having a good day over on live. That's not on this tournament realm. That beat a boss before anyone on this tournament realm. And all of a sudden, because WoW Progress can't match that, because WoW Progress doesn't check the individual tournament servers. They check the live armory.
Yeah.
It's a very different kettle of fish in how to do these things. And I think that's specifically why Blizzard haven't got involved in anything like this. They might do. They might see how profitable it's being, and especially see Method going up against Red Bull and everything else regarding this, and they might take a step in. But I don't know. The only thing I know about anything sort of Blizzard tournament-wise is any sort of money that they can give away in terms of tournament winnings and bits and pieces like that. So, I don't know.
Yeah. And all the things you said, it would be a nightmare. At least,
yeah.
Yeah.
As someone that has done production values on a very minimal budget and on a very long time scale, just the logistics of thinking about it can just leave nightmare things in my brain. Just worrying about it, because there's a lot more to worry about than just two people behind a screen. You know, there's lots of different things and bits and pieces, and privacy is a very big thing when it comes to, especially the Americans, more so than a lot of other people. It's odd, but let's move on. Let's move on.
Yeah.
The road to world first, the race to world first, is going to be very interesting to watch. I do suggest, if you're going to watch it, that you do watch it. Watch Method, watch Red Bull, whichever one's got your favourite casters on, I think is going to be your best choice, in complete honesty. So I want to put down, because I've mentioned that I'm at Heart of Azeroth 56. So the main Heart of Azeroth questline, as you work through it up to 60 at least to get rank 3, you are on the Crucible of Flame. There are specific options, like there are specific quests for the Crucible of Flame to get stuff. So we know that the entry level one is where we go to Neltharian's Lair and we get Ebonhorn, and we help him out, and then he comes and joins us in the Heart Forge. So later on, about 50, I want to say 54 or 50, yeah, 54, I want to say, or 53. 53 is 3%. 54 is when we get the next quest, where we go to the Emerald Dream and we help the Green Dragon. So basically, Kalagos comes to the Heart Forge and says, I know you're looking for the dragon essences. If you go to the Emerald Dream, you can find the green dragons. Like, go over to the Temple of Elune and go find the daughter of Ysera. And then you do all that. And I don't want to spoil it too much, but essentially we have Kalagos is now sitting in the Heart Forge, and at the end of that quest we have the green dragonflight in there as well. So 3 out of the 5 dragonflights are there.
Wow.
And I know that the next part at Heart of Azeroth rank 60 is to do with the red dragonflight. So the only one we're missing is the bronze. And I'm not sure if that's got to do with the rank 4 one at level 70.
And this would go back to what you were talking about last episode about the dragon essences.
Dragon essences in the Heart of Azeroth becoming the next dragon or the demon soul. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. That's a very lit theory.
Well, you got to remember that the closest thing that in the original story of the War of the Ancients was that the reason Neltharion made it the demon soul was because he was being whispered by the old gods, because he was closest to the earth. It's a little bit of a spoiler, but there is a specific voice line that Ashara mentions that she has pushed the King of Diamonds, and that's why we heard the whispers from Il'gynoth that he was made a pawn. So essentially, Magni has become a pawn that's pushed the heart of Azeroth towards the way it has. And so essentially we have a golden disc that's been collecting the lifeblood of the planet, which is now getting infused with the essences of dragons, which is essentially what the Dragon Soul was, just without the heartblood of Azeroth. But the heartblood of Azeroth will make up for the lack of power that the dragons are going to be able to imbue.
Wow. I'm excited to see where this goes, because this is incredibly exciting.
So as we've said before, the main point of the last boss in the raid is that we're going to be using the power of the Heart of Azeroth to unlock N'Zoth's chains, and we're not actually fighting Ashara herself. We're essentially playing puppets to try and survive, and the only way we survive is to unlock the chains. We don't know the outcome of that raid yet. We don't know if Ashara turns round and tricks. We don't actually get the last lock off. She does it, or N'Zoth uncomes them. We actually turn around and get the Rising of the Black Empire, and 8.3 is about Ny'alotha and the Rise of the Black Empire.
And I don't think we'll know Thursday or Tuesday, because the actual...
We will find out when somebody kills... Like, there will be... when Tuesday comes out on the American Oceanic servers, there will be a cutscene at the end of that Ashara raid, like there always is.
Well, I'm thinking about that. There's sometimes a mythic cutscene, and mythic.
There's never been a mythic specific cutscene. There's been a mythic specific part of the encounter, but there's never been a mythic scene. So there'll be a cutscene that will come out Tuesday, which will which will be unlocked because it's gated behind the instance. And the minute somebody clears a normal instance, it'll be up on YouTube, and at that point, MMO Champion, Wowhead will have it, and it'll be up there for everybody to see. So Tuesday we'll probably see the end of that encounter and what happens, which will be interesting to talk about.
Yes.
Because I'm actually away Thursday until Tuesday morning, so I'm hopefully going to be able to clear normal on Wednesday. Fingers crossed. That's my goal. That and Mechagon. I've got a lot to do next week.
And this is the week where I'm going to be doing all the stuff that you just did. I'll be doing that all.
Yeah, as the chat has pointed out, it's been said we'll know who the final BFA boss will be after at the end of the 8.2 raid. So it's going to be a big thing. But I want to talk into something that's crossed our way. There was an art developer at Blizzard, apparently, who went on 4chan and did an AMA. And there's lots of stuff in there for what comes in 9.0 and the ideas around that and everything else. So this is all speculation. I'm not going to say it's guaranteed, because 4chan, Reddit and everything else, people can just say who they think they're going to be. But there's a couple of interesting ideas in here. Specifically the fact that Sylvanas, as we have all thought, has been persuaded by N'Zoth. But a lot of the idea is that, and this is where a lot of the Sylvanas loyalists and some of the stuff that we saw coming up online at the beginning of the week, is that Sylvanas is using herself as a scapegoat to get the Alliance and the Horde to work together. That's why she knew the Alliance were going to come and rescue Bane. Because she's using herself as a way to get the factions to work together in a way that Rathian couldn't, so that they can fight the oncoming threat that N'Zoth is coming. So the info that's come from this essentially is that we're going to get N'Zoth as 8.3. The big continent is going to be we'll get a new area to go, which is going to be Ny'alotha, essentially. We're going to go to Ny'alotha and fight N'Zoth there. There's a lot of stuff on 9.0 which is interesting. It talks about a whole world revamp, because while we defeat N'Zoth, the Black Empire is still there, all the old gods are back, and it's Return of the Black Empire and everything else. They're redoing the entire world with the leveling ramp and everything else. It's going to be very interesting. There's a lot of stuff there. You know, there's apparently going to be the new hero class, which is going to be Gnome and Goblin only, which is going to be a Tinker class. So very much like Demon Hunters were Blood Elf and Night Elf only. So it could be interesting. You know, I could see it as a tank, a DPS, and a healer.
Well, and Talia Savatel did a video a couple of months back about a Tinker class. So, I mean, either this person's a big troll or they are a developer. I still would think that
there are a few things in the post which throw me off and make it think that it's not real. Like from a fact that it mentions Arthas is coming back. While I can imagine that could get the fanboys up in furor, I don't think they'll bring Arthas back. Arthas is dead. Like, unless he was raised by Bolvar and he's been there somewhere, Arthas is gone.
Because
they're saying that Bolvar is part of the reason. Like, Bolvar blatantly lied to our face and was the reason that Sylvanas got put into a war chief position. He was the one that whispered to Zul'jin. There's a couple of things in this post which make it seem like it's very full of crap. But there's some interesting stuff in it. Like, I like the idea of the whole world revamp, making the cities that are still surviving more race specific so that they stand out when, like, the factions come together. Sylvanas, I'm not going to say what the idea of Sylvanas and Zoth is going to be, but it's very, very interesting. I've given you the link, Frazley, so I'll let you look through it and then peruse as you wish. But there's a lot of stuff that's interesting there. Going to Ny'alotha has always been a big dream, and it's been leading up to this since Legion and before. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes. If they give us Ny'alotha, I imagine it's going to be Argus-esque, and we're not going to be able to fly, which is going to suck a lot of balls.
Yeah, that was my thought too. Is like
we feel like we've been given the ability to fly, and then it's taken away from us in 6 months.
Yeah, but that was how it felt. It was Argus too, because we got the Broken Shore as a zone, and all of a sudden, hey, with the Broken Shore, you can fly there, but you can't fly on Argus, and it would make sense.
I get it because it's a broken planet, you know. I get it.
Yeah.
But if Ny'alotha is being raised or we're going underwater, then, you know, to an air pocket. I want to be able to use my flying mounts. Just do it. You've proven with Mechagon that flying can be fun in a small condensed zone.
Yeah, and like even Escher is, I ran into a water wall today. So I mean, you could do it where you can't go farther. I mean, we have walls on zones that you can't fly past a certain point.
It'll be interesting to see where it comes. Ny'alotha would be a nice goal.
It could be like Deep Home.
It could be like Deep Home. You're absolutely correct. Deep Home was specifically built like the Storm Peaks with flying in mind.
Yeah. So I mean, I can see I can just see that you can't go up, but
you can only go so far. Yeah, Ny'alotha is self-contained. Yeah. A lot of this 9.0 stuff, remaking the world so it's all updated, redoing a lot of the zones so that they're more size scaled, equal to what they've done with Legion and BFA. Sounds really interesting. A good example they use that's in this post is Eversong Woods and the Ghostlands are one big zone.
Wow.
So stuff like that, and then they changed basically what would happen for the level squish is where we're at would get crushed down to 60. They'd be implementing new tech to decide how you want to play your story from 1 to 60, and all the 9.0 content would be 60 to 70. And then with the new tech, they could basically decide how you want to push through, because the scaling tech's there now. Scaling tech exists. All they need to do is just level squish it down and be like, you can play the entire Burning Crusade story from 1 to 60. But your new tech is going to be the new story will be 60 to 70.
And they just hired they've been hiring more developers, because that's one of the sad things about the layoffs was to hire more developers. So I mean, I was thinking like the resources
Yeah.
to do all this, they could have been working on it for a long time.
I mean, the way I've always looked at Warcraft specifically and an MMO is that they build... So, like, they've got the Classic team, yeah? WoW Classic comes out. They already have a subset of developers working on the expansion on TBC. And they have an idea of where they want that to go. But you've still got your WoW devs that are working on Classic and the patches for that until Burning Crusade is ready. Burning Crusade launches... all the team from the WoW team goes and works on Wrath, and the TBC team works on the length of that. And then the minute Wrath comes out, you've got your TBC team that work on the next team. Which is why, if you look at stuff, it's why Cataclysm feels so different in how it plays out compared to Wrath and Mists.
And this is a big enough expansion year, the 15th year. I could see them pulling even from the current team and other game teams, because we have had some teams, people pull from other things. I could see saying 9.0, we're going to go all out big, then we're going to then we might move off of the projects back onto other projects again. So I could see it, because wanting something pretty big and massive.
And they've canned a lot of stuff recently, and they've brought people over. The biggest thing I want is that if they're going to rebuild the world again like they did with Cataclysm, which is fair enough, if they feel like the only way to kickstart this world again is to rebuild it again, then just like they did with Cataclysm and they updated the engine, update the engine again. Because at the moment we're working on a older than 15-year-old engine, because it's still working on the framework of Warcraft 3. They need to just turn around and go, new engine, you know? Because we know that they're trying to put everything on the Overwatch engine right now. But there has to be something where they turn around and go, the engine that WoW is running on is now too antiquated to do what we need it to do. In order to go further, we need a replacement engine for it.
Because I've been seeing... I know Final Fantasy XIV might be a bad example, but I've been seeing some of the new zones and Shadowbringers, and they look gorgeous.
Yeah, the lighting and everything else. It's not a bad example, but you have to take into mind that the look of that game is very different to the stylized look of Warcraft. Remember that the last time Warcraft tried to look semi-realistic, I want to say, was Wrath. And then Cataclysm was spread out between all the different colours, but it was definitely more fantasy-styled with its colouring. So there was a lot of purple back in Cataclysm, a lot of purple. But then go to Mists. Mists is very fantasy-styled again. It's green. You got the Pandaren. You've got the what are the insects called? The Klaxi.
Yes.
You know, and we've got the Mogu, and they're all very fantasy-styled. You know, and we got the Legion. It's all sci-fi. Essentially, Warlords is very fantasy because it's very orc and demon. You know, and the Valkyr was very humanoid, very realistic looking. It was going for that kind of Skyrim typey look, you know, with the stylization of the buildings. And we've seen what fans can do in putting it in stuff like Unreal and everything else, and they use the different lighting effects and everything else. It's nice. It doesn't fit the world of Warcraft. And as Leo was saying, rebuilding the world would also make it easy to fit the idea of the factions ending. That's part of the idea of a lot of this, like, WoW leak, is that the whole world gets retooled based on the rise of the Black Empire. So we have a lot of the incursions. It allows it to... it's coming across that it's very ambitious. I imagine that we'll probably see something at BlizzCon regarding this. It really depends. There's nothing really big that I think they could announce between then and now, because I imagine we'll get 8.3 in January, mid to end January at this point. That would make sense. 6 weeks, BlizzCon, announce Diablo 4, announce 9.0, next Hearthstone thing, what they're doing with Heroes, Overwatch 2, the PvE stuff. It's going to be a big BlizzCon year. But this is how they work. And then between BlizzCon and everything else, they'll have stuff on the floor of the early alpha in the condensed zone. I think they have to do the expansion announcement at BlizzCon, because then between 8.3 and 8.35 or whatever they want to do, it gives them time to get the alpha and the betas done. And I guarantee you, after the success of how they've run the classic beta, the beta for 9.0 will be very small, very condensed. It'll happen.
Yeah, and it again, it makes sense. 15th year. I mean, to do something ambitious, do something amazing. I was trying to think in my head, like, because we have two different engine versions running on the client with classic and this. I was wondering if we could have another engine, like you zone in from one game to another game when you change servers. It just changes your client.
It would be very difficult, very interesting. Because as it stands, Classic is going to be running on the current engine tech, but with the server information obviously backdated to Classic WoW. So that's already going to be working on that, and then we're going to have, the back end is all going to be the same. Essentially, it's all going to run through the Battle.net tech, which will work with whatever engine. That's all a different bit of tech. But it'll be interesting to see how it comes by, I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks with the raids open. With the finale of Mechagon as well. It's busy. Mechagon, Eternal Palace, Mythic Eternal Palace, and the Race to World First, which is always a fun time to watch. And no doubt we'll talk about some of the stuff we've seen there. Frazley's going to go do his war campaign and do some more Nazjatar. Maybe he'll stick his nose in Mechagon before we talk next.
Yes,
I'm aiming to get 57, hopefully, before I leave on Thursday. That'd be nice. It gives me another 3% stamina. But yeah, I don't know. Whatever you guys choose to do in Warcraft, we hope you're having as much fun as we are. 8.2 has definitely re-brought some life back into this game.
Oh yeah,
and
I feel bad. Like, my Horde and Irons are taking a nap right now because I'm having just so much more to do in the current content.
I'm getting to a point, like, on my Demon Hunter, because I've obviously switched over from being the monk who's exalted with all the factions. I'm trying to get my Demon Hunter up to exalted with all the factions, because at the moment I'm missing out on Paragon boxes. Which is 2.5k AP every Paragon box.
Nice.
Yeah, so I need to finish the questing in those zones. I've done Stormsong Valley. Stormsong Valley? Yeah, Stormsong Valley. And I'm exalted with that rep up there at the moment. So I need to get the other two done. And I'm slowly working on it. But time with Nazjatar and everything else right now. But yes, Mr. Frazley, if they don't know who you are, where can they find you on the social media?
You can find me at Frazley-tastic on Twitter, on Twitch at FrazleyS, and you can find me talking with different people every week at gnomepodcast.com, and of course every week here with my big brother Titans Creed.
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Titans Creed. You can find my gaming specific one at Gaming Phoenix. You can find this podcast live on Twitch at twitch.tv/Project Phoenix Productions, where I stream 5 to 7 days a week depending on what's going on. You can find this podcast on YouTube at youtube.com/Project Phoenix Productions, where you can find that and some other variety of gaming content if anything else goes up on there. Otherwise, you can find this on all the normal good podcast sites as well. iTunes, Spotify, it's all there. Thank you very much for watching or listening as we close the book on this chapter of Stories Around Azeroth. And next week, we hope to be talking to you about the end of the Eternal Palace. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, and as Mr. Frazley likes to say,
be awesome.
Indeed. Catch you later, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.